other members of the committee and commission and the staff. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is to start from my right, my left, and audience right with the other commissioners introducing themselves.
Keelan Adams.
Carol King.
James Long.
And I am Richard Bailey, and I have the distinct honor of serving as the chairperson of this body. The Historic Preservation Commission is a 9-member board appointed by the City Council and serves on a voluntary basis without compensation. The purposes of the commission are to promote the educational, cultural, economic, and general welfare of the city through the preservation and protection of buildings, sites, structures, areas, and districts of historic significance and interest, through the preservation and enhancement of local historic, architectural, and archaeological and aesthetic heritage found in the city, through the maintenance of the distinctive character of the city's historic districts, and through the promotion and enhancement of the city's historic and aesthetic attraction to tourists and visitors. We'd like to begin our meeting this afternoon, and we would just like to bring to everybody's attention that since we don't have a quorum this evening, we can't vote on anything, but if you look at our agenda, we will proceed. Okay, it just dawned on me. Okay, if you look at our agenda, we will start with item number 1. And as I said, since we don't have a quorum, we can't vote on the approval of the minutes of the previous 2 meetings. So we'll go right to number 3 and ask our associate, Mr. Shaun Rose, to present the next historic neighborhood that's in the spotlight, and that is the Garden District.
Good evening, everyone. And before I get started, I had just an announcement to make. Ms. Huntley with Bell Street Baptist Church wanted me to announce they're unveiling a new historic marker at the site of their church this coming Sunday.
Will you say that again? Which church?
It's Bell Street Baptist Church. It's at 503 Oak Street.
Yeah.
And it'll be this coming Sunday, the 14th, at 2 p.m. So anyone interested, certainly come out and you can see the unveiling of the historic marker. So that's an important ceremony, and just wanted to go ahead and give that announcement for anyone listening and anyone in the audience as well. She wanted to extend that invitation to everyone. So now we'll go ahead with the Garden District Historic Neighborhood Spotlight. The Garden District was formerly known as Bellinger Heights, and it was locally designated as historic in 1983. It has long been a popular area due to its mature tree canopy, spacious lots, and high-style architecture. Indeed, the Garden District is Montgomery's largest historic district in terms of area and number of properties at approximately 630. The Northern District is a line running parallel. You can see the boundary up here. It's a little bit of a discontiguous line here at the north part. It runs parallel to Noble Avenue and just north of South Highland Court that encompasses the first 2 to 3 lots along the 900 blocks of South Perry Street and South Lawrence Streets and the 1,000 blocks of South Madonna and South Hull Streets. The southern boundary is the north side of East Fairview Avenue, and the east-west boundary spans at its greatest extent between Norman Bridge Road and South Court Street. The Garden District's former moniker of Bellinger Heights originated from Dr. Carnot Bellinger, who offered space near his home in the area to be used as a Confederate hospital during the Civil War. The houses in the northern half of the district tend to be closely spaced, modest cottages, while the majority in the southern end tend to be larger homes set well back from the street on larger lots. The neighborhood was primarily developed between 1890 and 1930 and attracted numerous prominent Montgomeryans, many of whom built lavish high-style homes on the spacious estate-sized lots in the southern portion. These lots also provided substantial space for large canopy trees to be planted, many of which have matured and been protected by the neighborhood's historic status since the mid-1980s. The Garden District exhibits the character of a late Victorian-era residential suburb whose development pattern was impacted by streetcars and automobiles. Indeed, the streetcar and automobile suburb was influenced by contemporary ideas of garden city design, hence the name Garden District, a movement that was popularized by Ebenezer Howard at the turn of the 20th century that had as its ideal a concentric ring combining town and country to acquire the benefits and jettison the drawbacks of both. The suburb, which does not fully conform to Garden City planning, is laid out on a rectilinear grid system with long, wide, parallel streets running north and south, intersected by a series of short, narrow streets running east to west. In a recent oral interview with one longtime Montgomeryan who grew up in the Garden District, the narrower east-west lanes, she advised me, informed me actually, were so those east-west lanes, they were once unpaved dirt roads that were used by service providers for the delivery of milk and other products. So that was interesting to learn from a person who grew up in this neighborhood. One unifying feature of the Garden District is the consistent use of hexagonal concrete sidewalk pavers used throughout the neighborhood. Moreover, by 1910, Bellinger Heights was depicted on city maps and was thought of as one of the best residential options available in the city. The Garden District continued its primary period of development through the 1930s, becoming denser, but it also witnessed new construction as late as the 1950s because some larger parcels along South Hull Street and Gilmer Avenue were replatted. The area was separately platted between the 1850s and 1900 by Samuel Hubbard, Francis Gilmer, Dr. Bellinger's daughter, Mary Augusta, and her husband, E.R. Holt, real estate developer Hartwell Douglas, and partners J.S. Wilcox and C.G. Abercrombie. The neighborhood's development pattern reflects a distinct separation between the working, middle, and upper classes of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Accordingly, the Garden District maintains homes that were historically associated with the upper class, including the Queen Anne style and those designed in the Greek, colonial, and Tudor revivals. Other styles, such as the Spanish Mission, Craftsman, and Arts and Crafts, were historically associated with the middle classes, while Victorian cottages and vernacular homes that do not fit neatly into a recognized architectural style were built primarily by the working class. The Garden District has maintained its ambiance and architectural integrity largely because of its local historic designation that provides protection in the form of the Architectural Review Board's design review process. Moreover, as time moves on, the neighborhood has attracted many individuals and families of diverse backgrounds who love to call this place home. Today, the Garden District is a thriving historic district in Montgomery. The neighborhood was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1985, shortly after its 1983 local designation. The local historic district was recently expanded in 2023 to include 30 additional properties along the east side of South Hull Street and may undergo another expansion soon to incorporate properties along the west side of South Court Street. The Garden District Preservation Association meets regularly each month to discuss neighborhood issues, foster community ties, and decide support or opposition for ARB petitions. Our agenda for this month, so just wanted to point out here, we have several photographs of representative houses within the neighborhood. And last, just wanted to credit my sources, which include the Garden District's National Register nomination, The Death and Life of Great American Cities, a book by Jane Jacobs, architecturalstyles.org, and that's it. So thanks for your time and attention.
Okay, any questions? Any concern? Anyone? Thank you very much. And I think that what you've done here this evening is that you added to our appreciation and understanding of our neighborhoods. Since you've written that, is there anything else that has popped into your head that you would like to just add to your presentation?
Are there any
Not
challenges?
that I can think of. What was that?
Are there any challenges in the district that we need to be aware of? Anything that could be a problem or may be a problem?
Okay. I mean, maybe folks from the neighborhood, if y'all have things that you want to share.
Is anyone here from the Garden District? Okay. All right. All right. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Would you like to come to the microphone?
Hello, guys. I'm Christina Cadden. I'm the president of the Garden District Preservation Association. And the only thing I'd like to add is, one of the things we struggle with is occupying some of our vacant and abandoned homes and getting more people interested in restoring them properly. So that's kind of something that we're trying to work on, and luckily we have the support of a lot of...
Ma'am,
Yes.
you have heard the history of the Garden District from our land use coordinator, Shaun Rose.
Yes.
If a person were at the airport or the bus station coming to Montgomery looking for a neighborhood and just happened to approach you, what would you say about the Garden District that might make that person interested in locating to the Garden District to live?
Okay. Well, I'd really tell them that we have some of the nicest homes in Montgomery, I think. And it's a great place to bring your family. Wow, that's a loaded question for me. Thank you. I'm actually not from Montgomery. So I found my house online, and it is a beautiful neighborhood to live in. It's quiet. It's beautifully lined with trees. I don't know. I hope that's good enough. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so happy to see that you're proud of your neighborhood.
Just another question. I would like to go back to the challenges that you talked about. I think you mentioned that you had challenges in regard to getting people to comply with the guidelines. I believe that's what you said. And is there anything about the guidelines themselves that are confusing that makes that a problem, or people just not complying? Is there anything we need to work on from our end to make it clear in the guidelines, or is it just the problem of people not wanting to comply?
You can come to the microphone, ma'am. You can come to the microphone. and give us your name also.
I'm Laura Calloway. I'm the immediate past president of the Garden District Preservation Association. I think the guidelines are relatively clear. We have a problem with often people do not want to go to the expense that's necessary to use appropriate materials or appropriate building styles, that kind of thing. They just want to go out to Home Depot and get the quickest, cheapest fix that they can.
Thank you. As we move along with our agenda this afternoon, we're going to ask Ms. Christy Anderson with the Alabama Historical Commission to come and talk about some of these nominations that we have on our agenda.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Did you find my PDF? Oh no, you don't want this. This is 200 pages long. I'm going to read it aloud as a dramatic reading. Yeah, it's not that document.
Mike, there's another file in the shared drive.
It doesn't really add anything. If you find it, great. It'll give people something to look at while I'm talking. As some of you may know, several years ago, Robert Smith had gotten a grant from the National Park Service to do a survey of Centennial Hill, King Hill, and Peacock Tract. A year or two after that, the Alabama Historical Commission kind of piggybacked on that groundwork and received a grant from the National Park Service to document Montgomery's civil rights history. And the result of this is what we have here this evening now, is a multiple property documentation form, which is a framework study that establishes a civil rights context from 1850 to 1984. And what that MPD does for us, if for anyone who's ever had the unpleasant experience of preparing a National Register nomination, the key piece of any nomination is being able to place a resource or a district in its context. And what this means, having this multiple property document, means that other civil rights resources will not have to reinvent the wheel every time they want to nominate, because the context has already been established. So it'll make it easier moving forward for other resources to be listed. So the MPD begins in 1850. So it begins with discussion of freedmen in Montgomery, as well as kind of how enslaved people may have circulated and interacted in Montgomery. And then when I first got to the commission, they had ended it in 1983, and this is a segue plug for your next month's topic, without any mention of Todd Road. So I had suggested that we needed to look at not only 1983 and Todd Road, but since this document really pivots on a lot of conflict and conflict resolution points in Montgomery's history, since the outgrowth of the Todd Road incident was the formation of Leadership Montgomery, that was the ending point for our context. So that's where it ends. So with that framework in place, at this time we have 2 individual nominations and 1 historic district that is being put to the State National Register Review Board in 2 weeks. First Baptist Church on Ripley is the first church, or the first property. We ended the period of significance for that building at 1980. Again, they initially looked at just 50 years. 50 years is the guide that the Park Service uses for establishing significance. But we discussed 1980 was when Pastor Morris was appointed as police department chaplain. And that again seemed to be kind of a natural kind of pivot reconciliation point, from, periods of conflict between city leaders throughout the civil rights movement, that his appointment as chaplain seemed to be a natural kind of historic break for that resource. So we are proposing that be significant up through 1980. The Centennial Hill Historic District is roughly bounded by I-85 on the south, Hall Street and Maggie Street on the east, Highland Avenue and High Street with a couple of blips up north of High Street, and South Union, South Bainbridge. It gets a little raggedy on the west side. Looking at that district for significance in social history and not architecture, which allows us to be a little more forgiving for loss of historic integrity. But again, being listed under this umbrella for activities related to the civil rights movement in Montgomery. The third nomination is for the Moore Building, which for most people is probably a less obvious choice. And if Dorothy wants to speak to this at all, I will certainly let her do so. The Moore Building is being nominated at a statewide level of significance with a period of significance of 1954 to 1956. So a very discrete slice of time. Two offices in the Moore Building served as the headquarters for the Alabama Council on Human Relations, which was the first statewide interracial organization working to, they were kind of I've sometimes referred to them as Switzerland. Their role was to promote dialogue, and they were in a position under Reverend Robert Hughes, who was a Methodist minister, to bring white city leaders to the table. And because they were an interracial organization and had membership, of Ralph Abernathy, and that they were able to bring parties to the table who might not have otherwise had a reason or desire to meet. So they brokered discussions between the city and the bus lines during the Montgomery bus boycott. So that little modern building that is somewhat inconspicuous from the outside really had a statewide impact on promoting dialogue in the movement. So it's one of the lesser known stories, maybe one of the less sensational stories of the movement, but a very important one. So we have those 4 nominations coming up in a couple of weeks, and unfortunately, since you don't have a quorum, I can't ask you to vote to sign a letter of support unless you can find a wiggle around that. And then we will have the Peacock Tract district nomination in September, going to the September review board meeting. And I can come talk to you all about that in September. But so those are the 4 we have in Montgomery. It's been a while since anything's been listed in Montgomery. And of course, before Montgomery became a CLG, we didn't find out about things that were listed with enough time for us to have any discussion about it. So does anyone have any questions? Or does Dorothy, Vince, or Georgette
Question.
want to say anything?
Well, all I'll say is I'm sorry, I regret that we can't give you a document that supports these nominations. They certainly are important sites in the city, and we would love to and should want to be included in the nomination process.
Try this mic right here. You think this one is better?
I believe you could forward individual support emails to Shaun individually as board members, or if you don't support it, emails not supporting it. But at least that way you could show that you have been involved in the process individually. So you're not taking a vote as the commission, but you are expressing individual support that could be entered into our record.
Okay. Any other comments?
And any letters of support that we receive end up going up as part of the official package to the National Park Service. So it would, I don't know that they scan and make those documents available through the National Archives, but it does become part of the record.
Okay, before you take your seat, I'd just like for some of the other commissioners to voice their opinion regarding this. We have one. Any other comments?
Well, I think having tried to read all 300, I'm pretty good at this. Having read almost, how many ever, 250 pages of it, it's some seriously dense reading, but it is an extremely accurate and detailed documentation of what happened in Montgomery in the 50s and 60s, obviously to, promote the significance to the federal government. But, I mean, it's a beautiful piece of documentation, it really is. It's footnoted, it's bibliographied, it's, they left no stone unturned, I think, in putting all the pieces together and in context.
And the project was actually delayed a little bit after I did the first review of it, because they went back and to answer some of the questions, I think Dorothy and I sent them 17 pages of comments on the first draft. And they added so much more to it. It wasn't just checking it. It was a complete reread of 200 plus pages of documentation
It's a
again.
lot of reading.
And if you looked at it, it's not like a regular National Register nomination. So you have the two big sections are Section E and Section F, and Section E is the historic context, and Section F is the registration requirements. And that basically identifies the different property types that could be eligible, and also identifies some potential candidates. So if y'all got wild and crazy sometime and decided you wanted to help one of those candidates get listed, you've got a list of potential National Register candidates that may warrant further investigation and documentation.
Anyone else? Yes, go right ahead. Oh, you don't have, okay, I'm not trying to force you to say something. I know this is something you really have shown an interest in. We really appreciate your taking the time to appear here this afternoon. And I just have a couple of general questions that I'd just like say something.
No, I said, okay.
Okay. I really appreciate what you all have done. Let me just ask you this. When this project is finished and is ready for public review, what can a person in Chicago, Miami, do to get additional information? In other words, I'm thinking that we don't want to let this be the last hurrah with Centennial Hill, with First Baptist Church, if you see what I'm saying. What can be our next step? What else can we do?
Well, Section F does identify other locations. Madison Park is named as being significant when we talk about other neighborhoods.
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, identify yourself, please.
Dorothy Walker. I'm a colleague of Christy Anderson at the Alabama Historical Commission. I want to speak to your point, Dr. Bailey, about what can be a next step. Back in the 1990s, the Alabama Historical Commission did the same kind of contextual study for Rosenwald schools. And one of the things that the commission took the next step of doing was a traveling exhibit on Rosenwald schools. Now, I'm not sure how we would actually do that, but I think it'd be worth pursuing some little small thing that could travel throughout the community so that other parts of the community, we were just talking about the Garden District. I'm not sure how much people in the Garden District know the history of Centennial Hill, or in Cloverdale or other communities. I think it would be an excellent opportunity to have some kind of pop-up exhibit that could travel around the city to schools, churches, wherever, so that people are more educated about the historic sites in this community. Because I think a lot of people ride through the community and they see things that are not in the best condition. And I think they tend to dismiss that and not understand the significance of that place and what it has meant, not only to the city of Montgomery's history, to the country's history, and to the world's history. This is a place that Dr. Martin Luther King lived, Reverend Abernathy lived, Georgia Gilmore. I mean, you could just go down the line.
with people, Rufus Lewis, people who contributed significantly to our country's and the world history. And I think it would be an opportunity to do something like that. So I would certainly support something being put together that would highlight some of the places like the Tulane building and the Harris House and the King Home. I mean, you just got so many things, Jackson Street Baptist Church. There's so many things that could be highlighted on an exhibit. So that would be my recommendation for a next step.
And I think that's a good one. And one of the things that jumps out at me when these kind of topics surface is simply this. I have been anxious to talk to someone with the school board about getting some kind of curriculum regarding local history being taught in the schools. And when we begin to talk about civil rights here in Montgomery, in fact, in the state, in this nation, one of the points I made when we unveiled the historical marker for Inez Baskin back in November of 2023, I made this one point. The day is rapidly approaching where there won't be anyone alive who participated what we call the civil rights movement. And Inez Baskin's departure is just another example, I should say, of a person who are leaving the scene. And what we will have to depend on at some point in the future will be what someone has written or what someone has recorded, some of these persons, but they won't be around. And I would urge everybody to take advantage of the few persons we still have alive and make the best use of those persons to ensure that our precious history is not lost forever. So that's the reason I commend the two of you to coming here this afternoon and letting everybody know as much as possible what's going on. People talk about Peacock Tract. How many people know who Peacock was and how he wound up getting that tract of land in the 1830s, 1840s, I believe it was? And this is our job. When we start talking about the Garden District and we look at those names of persons who bought those land tracts, those persons are part of our precious local history. But how many people know anything about those individuals? That's what we're driving after. And I think, and speaking for this body, that you have our cooperation to do whatever we can to help you further our collecting of data so that things don't get lost and moving to the next level. Because I think, and I'm certain in saying this, we owe it to posterity to do the very best that we can to make certain that this wonderful history of this magnificent place we call Montgomery is not lost. So thank you very much. Yes, go ahead.
And I'm sure that again, these projects have kind of piggybacked that the city has recently selected. Did you make the final selection? Did you get it done?
Just waiting on the contract to be signed. Yeah.
Close to having a contract signed to do just that, to collect some of those oral histories in that area around I-65, I-85, in the Peacock Tract. So that's kind of the next progression that I'm sure you'll be hearing more about from Shaun and Warren as that moves forward.
Thank you. Is there anyone else, before we leave this part of our agenda for this evening, is anyone else who would like to have anything else to say? Want to add something? Don't want to overlook anybody.
Well, I will say that I think one of the things that could be done to combine these two projects with the exhibit is we have something now in terms of technology called a QR code that could be put on that exhibit so that people who see that, and it doesn't have to be a physical exhibit, it could be a digital one that lives online, people can hear those oral histories. And I know the Montgomery County Historical Society collected some oral histories some years ago as well. So I think there needs to be a way to pull all of these voices together with the places to help raise awareness about this history. And I know the Alabama Historical Commission has been striving for decades to try to get that community listed, so this is a long time coming.
Yes, and finally, I would appreciate if you run across anything or anybody with the Alabama Historical Commission who's about to demolish a building or a house, if you'd ask them to contact us before they demolish that building or house, or whatever the case might be, and if you could also ask them to look around and see if they have noticed anything that might have value, a book, or autograph, a photograph, or whatever the case might be, in terms of our forming a partnership where we would do the same thing that might benefit the Alabama Historical Commission.
And Dr. Bailey, I think that's a good point, that the city themselves can actually build on this and identify properties where they could be locally designated. In fact, I believe some of the reports actually make some suggestions as to the ones that we should be considering for local designation. So I think that's the other huge advantage of having this done. These properties are also potentially eligible for local designation, which puts that protection in place.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming out. You had something else you want to say? Okay, thank you so much for coming out. As we continue our agenda, House Bill 128, and Shaun, you want to lead the discussion on this?
Yeah, we haven't, there's not been any updates on this. So, and you know, if you all want to discuss further, we can, or, I mean, we can actually kind of move on. You know, there's nothing new regarding the bill.
Well, I just say, I still think it's a really bad bill. I hope it doesn't move, because there's some real bad problems. We just talked about the National Registry and the Alabama Registry. Unless you're on the Alabama Registry or the National Registry, once this bill passes, your designation as a historical church ends automatically. Your identity, it automatically ends. Bell Street, I don't know if that's on the National Registry or the Alabama Registry, but if you own it automatically ends, and you have to go and file something with the probate judge for it to continue. In other words, I've lived all these years being a historical property, and now I got to do something to continue it instead of just because somebody wants to get out of it. It seems like it's the wrong way around. In the way they got it set up, everybody that's historic automatically becomes not historic, voids their designation unless by the city. Since Alabama designates the National Alabama Register and the U.S. designates the National Registry, I guess you're okay if you own those, but if you're not on those, then there's a real problem.
All I can say is if this eventually does pass, then we will do a significant amount of outreach to the churches that have had their local designation removed and try and encourage them to request it, because they can remain locally designated if they wish, but it's going to mean a significant amount of outreach from us to approach them all, explain the situation, and hopefully keep that local designation.
Shaun, before we leave this point, could you just inform our audience this evening what House Bill 128 is?
Sure.
Or what it calls for?
Yeah, the bill is, essentially it will roll back any local designation for places of worship within the state. This is a statewide bill, and so we are very concerned about it. There is a process that's outlined in the bill to keep the designation, but then the church has to actually go through a designation process again, essentially. So that creates a burden there. As Warren indicated, we fully intend on, if it does pass, that we will be reaching out to the churches in Montgomery. Last I looked on my designation list, there's over a dozen churches on our list. So yeah, it would be a significant amount of work, but we certainly would do that and go through that outreach process and give all the people the information that they need so they understand what the process is and walk them through it in order to opt back in to the local designation.
Thank you very much. And to the person in our audience this afternoon, I would encourage you to look up House Bill 128 and contact your representatives to let your voice be heard regarding House Bill 128, okay? Do we have a staff update this afternoon? Any staff update? Number 9.
Shaun and I have continued with the South Hull Historic Local Designation process. We're basically updating the information we have from the prior survey to make sure that everything is open and everyone is included. We are having 2 public meetings, which is open to anyone who has any questions, whether they support the designation, whether they don't. The first of the public meetings will be on April the 26th from 2 to 3 p.m. and that will take place in here. And the second one will be on May the 8th and that will be here between 5:30 and 6:30. These letters are all going out this week to all the property owners and the tenants. There is also a page on the city website now, keeping people updated or letting them know about this proposed designation. The South Hull Neighbourhood Association have it on their website also. So hopefully you can see that we're doing everything we can to make sure that everyone is aware of this and that everyone has their say. We've also offered to accept comments by email, by mail, by telephone, and if anyone feels any sort of intimidation about speaking at a large meeting, whether they're in favour or not, we have offered to meet with them in smaller groups or individually, so we're doing everything we can to make sure that everyone has all of the information that they need to determine how they feel about the historic district. Now, as you know, there's no requirement anymore to have a certain amount of signatures in support of a district, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that every property owner is fully updated on this process, and we'll keep doing that from here forward.
Okay, comments? Anyone has any feedback? Okay, number 9, Shaun, would you just discuss this revised ARB design guidelines?
Sure. Yeah, this is where we at, section 2 for site and setting. So I included this in the agenda for you all to review. If you all have any questions or comments on the draft, just let us know, and we'll be able to incorporate them into the draft. So these will be the new Architectural Review Board design guidelines. They're quite out of date. From 1985 is what we have in effect currently. So yeah, this has been ongoing work for a number of years to get these guidelines updated. So yeah, if you all as a board have any comments on them, please let me know. You can email me, send the comments to our office, however is most convenient for you.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Bailey, I'd like to ask Warren and Shaun about the Xbox issue that we talked about, that we had in Capitol Heights this past week. You guys have really covered it well in here, in the site, you know, very specific about protecting the hex blocks that add, and you're very, very specific about how much value it does add to the neighborhoods. So, hey, is there a way to get, you know, the city fathers to see it the same way? You know, we go through, this would be policy-ish, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, the blocks that were removed were removed mistakenly without letting us know. I believe a property owner had approval to remove a few of them for a driveway, but they went a bit further. We did meet with someone from roads maintenance and made it clear that anytime any more are going to be removed or repaired, they have to reach out to us and let us know. The issue is that we were told that that department lacked the funding and the experience to actually do the work properly by replacing these pavers, and he did offer to come along and speak to the HPC at the next meeting, if you would like him to, so he can explain the situation. Some of the potential opportunities in districts are possibly to apply for grants to make up for the funding that they are lacking, but that does take time. But certainly we've drawn their attention to Chapter 15 and let them know that anytime any work is being done on these pavers, then they have to reach out and let us know, and we will then go and assess it. We're also bringing this up to the ARB also. As I said, he did say he would come along and speak to the boards if you wanted him to do so. Shaun and I had also considered maybe just doing a drive-by survey in the historic districts to see what is remaining and what is not, maybe on a sort of block-by-block basis so that we have a record of it. And then, possibly bring it to you guys or the ARB for any recommendations they would like to see. We did discuss replacing the pavers that are removed. We did discuss stamping concrete in a hexagonal pattern. But yet again, the issue comes down to experience and cost. We were told that yes, the city department could remove the existing pavers and remove the rubble, but the actual concrete pouring, it's a special concrete, and the stamping would have to be done by an external company. So the difficulty is making up that difference in cost between what the city has and what it can do and what the residents would like to see. I'm not really in favour of stamping unless it's really, really necessary, because I don't really want to go down the road of giving an alternative to replacing the pavers if we can possibly have them
Well, a
replaced.
slab of concrete that cracks causes as much liability as a 10-inch hex block, one that pops up. I mean, we see that in the different neighborhoods with the tree roots and all that. It would affect one hex block as opposed to 4 to 5 feet of concrete when it does come up. But we have had this issue before, and probably 10, 12 to 15 years ago, the neighborhoods actually did a sidewalk survey because they were having trouble in Cottage Hill, especially because they are full of hex blocks as well. And the surrounding neighborhoods, Peacock Tract may have some, at least to the west part too. So it became a real concern. And at that particular point in time, the department, they were actually replacing. I mean, they were pulling up, dealing with the problem, and then put it back down again. I know that sounds labor intensive, but not after what I saw 4 days worth of those guys working on those 2 blocks, the hex blocks.
Yeah, and their main concern is safety. That is really what drives it. I'm of the opinion, these could be lifted and put back down and set.
It's a lot easier to deal
properly
with a hex block than it is a large slab of concrete.
Yeah. So it has been addressed. They are aware of the process that we want to see for the future. So hopefully it will not happen again. It will at least be brought to our attention, and we can address it.
But that would be, I think, a good, it would be nice to have whoever that is come and speak to us. Maybe not the next, because I think we have a really big program in May, but maybe June or July, and I think the historic neighborhoods would like to hear that too.
Yeah, and that would be a good opportunity for the representatives from the neighbourhoods just to show their support for keeping these pavers.
For that particular person too. Honoring our wishes.
Yeah,
so
while there may be 1 or 2 residents possibly who have just moved here, want them taken up, maybe if they see the strength of feeling from the districts and really get a feel for how much people want to see them kept. We can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've just about come to the conclusion of our agenda for this afternoon. I'd just like to ask anyone in the audience if you'd like to make a statement, say something, acknowledge your presence. Don't want to overlook anyone. To our other, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, for those of you audience or commissioners, we do have the Preservation Leadership Seminar on year 5. Will be in May, the 5 Wednesdays. We've got the schedule ready, and this year the focus will be looking at Montgomery's urban renewal and the interstate construction and the effect that it had on the development of our neighborhoods and around the downtown area. So we've got 5 really good speakers. It's Wednesday nights from 5:30 to 7, but you're welcome to pick up a schedule. Also on Friday, May the 5th, no, that's May the 3rd, we have Joseph McGill with the Slave Dwelling Project will be coming to town. He's come to town a couple of times to talk about, he's drawing attention to slave dwellings. We have 8 actually at Old Alabama Town, so he'll be doing a presentation at Old Alabama Town. And also signing his book, Sleeping with Ancestors, where we're actually a chapter in there too, because we were very instrumental in getting him to look at slave dwellings from an urban standpoint. We were the first place that he actually visited outside the state of South Carolina, and it kind of made him have to rearrange his whole mission because the rural versus the urban concepts of the enslaved in their lives. And so he's really a neat guy. He does a lot of stuff all over the country, and so everybody's welcome to take one of these and come and visit and meet him, and we just talk. We just have a good conversation.
Carol, for your television, our television audience, would you give them the date and time once again?
Right, this is Sleeping with the Ancestors with Joseph McGill and his co-author, which is Herb Fraser. They'll be here Friday, May the 3rd at 5:30 at Old Alabama Town, 301 Columbus.
Okay. Any other commissioners has any announcement you would like to make? Any other commissioner?
Dr. Bailey,
Yes.
I did want to give just a plug for next month's HPC meeting.
Yes.
I think Christy mentioned it. We'll be screening the Todd Road incident documentary film. So that'll be May 14th, 5:30 p.m. at City Hall here. And we expect to have a decent turnout of people interested in the topic, and we'll have a panel discussion as well with folks from Leadership Montgomery. And so just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, the Todd Road incident documentary film and panel discussion afterward.
Thank you. In other words, we will not have a meeting here, the commission that is. Next month, we'll have a discussion on Todd Road, and we would really love to see you come out for that May the 14th, I believe it is. The second Tuesday in May, 5:30 p.m., we'll kick around Todd Road once again and hope that you will appreciate what we have to say. As we close out this
So
afternoon,
does that mean that that's assigned nominations, that's not till June? Did we talk about that?
Right.
The signs?
Well, I think we had talked about doing a quick vote,
Okay.
like the very beginning of the May meeting, and then they'll get presented their signs in June.
take it from there.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'd like to thank Mr. Mike Mann over to my left and your right for his excellent video controls. I'd like to thank in security Mr. Todd Burrows and Mr. Dennis Potter to the rear, and from the Land Use Division, Ms. Tanya Ingram, and you've already heard from Mr. Shaun Rose and Mr. Warren Adams, and to our other commissioners. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming out. This meeting is hereby adjourned.